Okay. Greetings, everyone. Dober doshli. I'm Steve Hrvoje, and welcome to our first NFCA-CF History Speaker Series session. And we are very excited to have a wonderful pair of University of Zagreb professors to kick off this new initiative. Please let me share that this is our 30th anniversary of our national umbrella organization, and we are only getting more active with so many cultural, education, diplomatic, charity, and political projects. We weathered the pandemic and we came out stronger than ever. We had so many 2022 accomplishments, and I hope many of you saw that list through our recent MailChimp newsletter within the last month. We're very, very proud that on a moment's notice, the NFCA-CF can mobilize our network on any fast-breaking development or to support any event or meeting or initiative partnering with our member groups and individual activists nationwide. I'm very proud also we raised $23,000 in 2022 to support Croatia's Special Olympics organization. And that 20-member Croatian delegation will be in Berlin for the Special Olympics Summer World Games in June. And I'm happy that 4 of our NFCA board members will be there, including Judy Zivich and Ron, who are on the line today. And we'll be there with 7,500 athletes from 140 countries from around the world. Now, today, I'm very pleased now to hand over this session to kick off the History Series event today to our chair, one amazing activist and NFCA-CF board member, Judy Zivich, who'll be the maestro for today's session. And board member Mark Plavatich will manage the slides. Judy, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Steve. Just before we get started, a few housekeeping notes so that we can keep the session moving and we can have some time at the end to do some question and answers. So you're all muted currently. If you have questions as the speakers are presenting, please just enter them into the chat room. And at the end of the session, we will try to get to at least a few of those. And the ones that we don't get to, we will try to have the professors answer afterwards. And then we'll post that to our shared folder on OneDrive. There's also a link in the chat room at the very top, along with my email address. So if somehow the link doesn't work for you, just please feel free to email me, and I'll send you that link again. So let's start with just a little bit of a background of why we're doing this. I've always been personally interested in my Croatian heritage and history, but I think most of us in the diaspora don't really know enough about our history. Some of us can read some things, but most of the texts are written in the Croatian language or an academic level. So unfortunately, it's not very accessible to most of us. So about a year ago, I started thinking about this, and I asked Steve, since the NFCA has really done a lot and been very influential in Croatia's recent history for the last 30 years, that the NFCA might be a great organization to actually try to solve this problem. So that's why we're here today, is just to give a quick overview of 2 topics, but hopefully we will be able to do 5 or 6 more sessions throughout this year. And eventually, if we get enough interest in these topics, we would really like to do an in-person one-day course here in the United States somewhere, where you could actually come and learn about Croatia's history in chronological order with some experts who will present, so that at the end of the course, you'll really have a good foundation on our Croatian history. So with that, I will introduce our first presenter, Professor Hrvoje Mandic, who was born in Mostar, Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1987. He completed elementary and gymnasia at Father Dominik Mandic School in Široki Brijeg, and then attended the University of Mostar, where he obtained a bachelor's degree in history and pedagogy and graduated in history in 2009. He enrolled in the graduate study of history at the Croatian Studies program of the University of Zagreb and obtained the title of Master of History and Master of History Teaching in 2011 and Croatian Studies in 2014. He completed postgraduate doctoral study of history at the Croatian Studies faculty of University of Zagreb, where he received a PhD in 2020 from the Faculty of Croatian Studies with the thesis Herzegovinian Franciscan Province in World War II and post-war, with his mentor, PhD Mario Jareb. Professor Mandic currently lives in Zagreb, where he is head of the Central Office for Digitization of the University of Zagreb. This office is responsible for the comprehensive digitization of archival and library materials of the university and its constituent units, as well as its processing, storage, and security in the digital repository of the virtual collections of the university. Professor Mandic is an expert archivist, lecturer, historian, and contributor of many papers in academic journals and congresses. His areas of expertise are the Franciscans of Bosnia and Herzegovina, military history of World War II, political and war history of the Homeland War from 1991 to 1995 in Bosnia and Herzegovina. His most recently published book is Herzegovačka Franjevačka provincija u Drugom svjetskom ratu I poraću, which will be published later this year in English under the title Herzegovinian Franciscan Province in the Second World War. He is currently writing a history book about the Homeland War in the Republic of Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina from 1991 to 1998. Aside from his academic interests, he enjoys playing indoor soccer, hiking, and traveling. Professor Mandic, welcome.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm so proud. And I send you all a big heart and greetings from Zagreb. I will introduce myself with a topic, Herzegovinian Franciscan Province in World War II. So I'll be politely say to Mr. I think Pavelitic for open my presentation. It will be easier to present. Thank you, Mark. So topic and also my new book in English. Hopefully it will be published in the second part of this year. You can put Mark number 2 slide, please. So at the preface, I just want to have some geographical knowledge about my topic. So our left side is, of course, United States. And that little point in the middle of Europe, little green point, is Bosnia and Herzegovina. So Mark, please go ahead. As you see, Bosnia and Herzegovina is a state who is next to Croatia and also next to the Serbia with our right side, and also with Montenegro. The main and the capital city of Bosnia and Herzegovina is Sarajevo. So my topic will be focused on the Herzegovina. For example, Mostar is the biggest city in Herzegovina and some regional political capital of Krasić in Bosnia and Herzegovina. As you know, Bosnia and Herzegovina is also a complex state which have 3 nations: Serbs, Bosniaks, and Croats. Croats mostly live in the Herzegovina in south of Bosnia and Herzegovina, near Mostar, Široki Brijeg, and near to the border of Croatia. Mark, please go ahead. Also, some preface about Croatian Franciscans and about Croats in medieval kingdom of Bosnia and Hum in 30th century. As you well know, the Croatian king Tomislav also have his capital, and he established his reign of his new kingdom in Tomislavgrad in Bosnia and Herzegovina. That's the city in Herzegovina. So I I want to point this situation that Bosnia and Herzegovina once in 13th century was a Croatian state. Bosnia and Herzegovina, I think medieval kingdom Bosnia and Hum was the second Croatian states at the southeastern part of Europe. As you see, medieval kingdom Bosnia was Roman Catholic kingdom and blessed from Holy Pope in Rome. In 13th century, Franciscan order, first time in history, stepped in Bosnia and Herzegovina, first in medieval Bosnia and then in Hum. They were all missionaries from Catholic Church. But problem after 2 centuries, precise in the 14th and the 15th century, Ottoman conquest of medieval Bosnia and Hum in the 15th century, and slaughter of Roman Catholics, Croats, Franciscans, and Franciscans monastery and churches in medieval Hum, like Krasić, Mostar, and Ljubuški. It was a new geopolitical structure in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So when Ottoman Empire conquered all Bosnia, or medieval Bosnia and medieval Hum, in 15th century with Ottoman, with Turks, came also Serbs. So the first, how to say, maybe the first influence and first arrival of Serbs, of Orthodox Serbs, was in Bosnia and Herzegovina in 15th centuries. Ottoman rule was in Bosnia and Herzegovina was from 15th century till the 19th century, when the Austro-Hungarian Empire occupied Bosnia and Hum in 1878 and established the first time like artificial state, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Before Austro-Hungarian Empire, there was no Bosnia and Herzegovina. It was just Bosnia and Hum. But Austrians make artificial state to easy have like occupy the state, so it will be easy for administration, and they just established Bosnia and Herzegovina. And in that Austro-Hungarian Empire, Franciscans influence was so high, because in the Ottoman rule, Franciscans were slaughtered, Franciscans were killed, their churches and medieval monasteries were demolished and everything. So in Catholic Austro-Hungarian Empire, Franciscans, how to say, they breathe easily, so they could spread their influence to build churches, monastery, and etc. Dear Mark, let's go. So Franciscans' provenance in Herzegovina from 1845 till the beginning of World War II. So, like I said, the persecution of Catholics was stopped in Austro-Hungarian Empire. So Franciscan established a couple of monasteries in Herzegovina. The first and famous one in Široki Brijeg, then Mostar, then Tomislavgrad, then Humac near Ljubuški, also the city in Herzegovina. So after the end of World War II in 1918, Austro-Hungarian Empire was defeated and vanished from political map of Europe. Franciscans also have a struggle with Austro-Hungarian Empire, because Austro-Hungarian Empire make artificial like this nation, like Bosniaks. Bosniaks were actually Ottomans Muslims, and there were like there were religious, so religious oriented. So Austro-Hungarian Empire make a new nation, like an artificial nation, and they cooperate with the Bosniaks, Austro-Hungarian empires, but not such. Austro-Hungarian do don't like to be cooperate with Croats because they think the Croats were enemies in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So that was a real problem for Franciscans. But in establishing 1918, establishing all the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, Bosnia and Herzegovina was from 1918 until 1941 was under Serbia, or under Serbian reign, and like in the name of Kingdom of Yugoslavia. Residence of that regime was in Belgrade in Serbia. Mark, please go ahead. So this is a picture of monastery church in Široki Brijeg after attack of partisans in February 1945. I will talk about that later. Mark, please go ahead. Sorry, Mark, are you there?
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. Establishment of the independent state of Croatian and Herzegovinian Franciscans. The historical fact that a vast majority of province members never accepted the Ustaša regime, because the regime led by Poglavnik Ante Pavlić enacted a series on which the persecution of the non-Croat population of Jews, Serbs, and Romani was based. And the same regime legalized the persecution of Serbs and the independent state of Croatia and marked them as a threat to the state order. Also, the aim of these legal provisions enacted in the first month of the new government, and the new government was to break with the legacy of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia and Croatianize all segments of state and social life. That's the problem in connections with Ustaša regime and the Herzegovinian Franciscans. But it's need to be told that Herzegovinian Franciscans are politically, they politically want a state, Croatian state, because they were patriots. Mark, please go ahead. I will make point with this presentation because you see that Herzegovinian Franciscans are ones who saved most of the Jews, Serbs, and members of illegal communist movement in Mostar during the World War II. So friars Dominik Mandic and provincial friar Leo Petrovic was organized savings of Jews, Serbians, and all communist illegal from Nazi and Ustaša regime in Herzegovina. Jews called Fra Leo Petrovic Friends of Jews from 1941 till 1945. So Leo Petrovic was like Archbishop Aloysius Stepinac in context of Bosnia and Herzegovina in the World War II. So in this chapter, I have almost 50 pages of my chapter of my new book on English about Leo Petrovic and the savings and the statistical savings of Jews, Serbs, illegal communist from Mostar. Thank you, Mark. Go ahead. This is a military map from Belgrade, from Military Institute. It is a map of partisans' 8th Dalmatian Corps in attack in Herzegovina in February 1945. Mark, please go ahead. This is partisans preparing and organizing before the attack of Široki Brijeg, also in February 45. Mark, go ahead. This is a very important and interesting picture because this picture was took in the 8th of February, February 8, 1945. And in the middle of picture is English Major Peterson. He was like advisor in first Partisans Tank Brigade. in attack of Široki Brijeg. In my investigating and my researching, I found some extraordinary documents from archives when it's all clear that British, I think English royal family, English Foreign Office organized and organized and prepared a partisans brigade in World War II to attack mostly territories where the Croats lived, and in such way British, I think English, are so connected, and they were here in Široki Brijeg when partisans killed 29 Herzegovinian Franciscans. So that's interesting point. I also have one big chapter in my book explaining all the circumstances of that killing and connecting the British army, English army with Josip Broz Tito's partisans. Dear Mark, let's go on. Also, partisan attack of Mostar, 1495. In Mostar, partisans that day killed 8 Franciscans, along with Friar Provincial Fralio Petrovic. Mark, go ahead, please. This is some notes, and I will finish with this slide. Because Yugoslavian communist partisans slaughtered 66 Franciscan of 1945. Just in February 7th, February 14th, in other places in Herzegovina, Croatia, like Mratovo near Šibenik, or Drniš near Zagreb, Bleiburg in Austria. So I will read here a conclusion and try to make a point why the partisans killed the Franciscans. After 1945, Yugoslav historiography and journalism construct reality by labeling the Franciscans of Široki Brijeg as a monolith group of Ustaša collaborators, which they were not. The facts indicate that the Franciscans of Široki Brijeg were not killed because they allegedly supported the Ustaša regime. For the communist regime, the Franciscans were potential enemies. Anglophiles, that is, supporter of Western type democracy, and at the same time loyal to the Catholic Church, which was the true ideological enemy of new regime. They were also potential enemies for the reason that they had not been compromised in any way during the war. They cooperated with the opponents of Ustaša regime, saving many of them from danger and protecting them throughout the war, thus remaining faithful to the instructions of the Catholic Church. For the several Herzegovinian Franciscans who retreated together with the independent states of Croatia army forces in the spring of 1945, we can assume that they had cooperated with the authorities of independent state of Croatia. Both the former and latter were killed without trial by Yugoslav communist partisans. In the times that followed, the murdered Herzegovinian Franciscans were subsequently proven guilty, and in this way, attempt was made to justify this war crime. So it is interesting that Josip Broz Tito, a political and a military leader of Communist Party of Yugoslavia, ordered a slaughter of Herzegovinian Franciscans in Široki Brijeg, in Austria, and all other parts of Croatia. The Josip Broz Tito has vassals also. His servants was also Mika Tripalo and Milka Malada Planinic. About Mika Tripalo, I assume that my colleague Wollfy will say something after. So it's interesting that all picture is connected. So after 1945, the communist leaders in Croatia and who were enrolled and who were actually guilty for killing the Herzegovinian Franciscans were later get some new position in the government of Yugoslavia in Zagreb or in Belgrade. So Mark, you can show us a little more pictures. So this is partisans occupied Mostar in February 14th, 1945. And two more pictures, I think. So this is originally a picture from 1968, I think. It shows remains of 12 Franciscans killed and burned by communists in anti-aircraft shelter near the monastery in Široki Brijeg. I think, Mark, one more picture. This is a picture of anti-aircraft shelter, and every year in the February 7th, Herzegovinian Franciscans celebrate the mass for killed brothers and civilians and Herzegovinian Franciscans in Široki Brijeg. Thank you for your patience. Sincerely yours.
Excellent presentation, Professor, and we'll take questions after Professor Krasic ends. But yes, Judy. Okay, we are, I guess, ready for the next introduction.
Okay, before we start real quickly, I hope that most of the people that are on today received a reminder email last evening. We have about half of the people who signed up, so I just wanted to know if you did get that reminder. Just let me know through the chat or whatever. Also, before we get started, I just wanted to introduce the second speaker, Professor Wollfy Krasic. Professor Krasic lives in Zagreb, Croatia. Even at a young age, he achieved considerable success in a national history competition and was also valedictorian of his grammar school. He went on to receive a double major in archaeology and history from the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences in Zagreb, with doctoral work in contemporary Croatian history in the European and world context. His doctoral thesis is Croatian Spring and Croatian Political Emigration. His mentor was Professor Hrvoje Mandic, PhD, longtime professor at Yale University.
I know him.
Professor Krasic is currently an assistant professor at the Department of Demography and the Croatian Diaspora at the Faculty of Croatian Studies, University of Zagreb. He is also Vice Dean for International Cooperation at the Faculty of Croatian Studies and Executive Director of the scientific journal Croatologia. In addition to a series of journalistic and scientific papers, he has also published 2 scientific monographs and has written about the causes of Croatian economic emigration during the 1960s and 1970s. You'll find more information about his work and others in our additional reading document through the link in the chat room. Aside from his academic interests, Professor Krasic enjoys archaeology and genealogy. Professor Krasic will present Croatian Spring from 1967 to 1971, a topic which I think most of us on this Zoom today sort of remember hearing about it. Probably the first time most in the United States actually heard about Croatia as being a part of Yugoslavia at that point, and actually started wondering where Croatia really was on the map and why things were happening there. So Professor Krasic, welcome, and he'll tell us all about that time.
Hello, thank you, everybody. So, esteemed members of the National Federation of Croatian Americans, as well as other presents, I can say, dear compatriots overseas, I send you the warmest regards from Zagreb. I also thank Mr. Steve Rukavina for the invitation to participate in this project. It is truly an honor and a pleasure for me. On the one hand, because my academic research focuses on the Croatian diaspora, and on the other hand, because I'm trying to make at least a small contribution to strengthening the relations between Republic of Croatia and its diaspora of millions. Moreover, I would like to emphasize that I am truly amazed at the dedication with which members of this association care for their Croatian heritage. But in order not to delay this introductory part, I would like to continue with my presentation on Croatian Spring, so maybe we can start. Sure. Great, great. Thank you. We can move on to the second slide, please. Great. So the Croatian reform movement, also referred to as liberal national movement or popular Croatian Spring, represents a series of processes and events of the greatest significance for the Croatian history between the end of the World War II and the collapse of the Yugoslav communist regime and the establishment of the independent and democratic Republic of Croatia in the late 1990s and in the beginning of the 1990s. Although there are disagreements about the dating of its beginning, in the broadest sense, it refers to a period from the overthrow of Aleksandar Ranković, the then second man in Yugoslavia and the leader of the centralist group in the League of Communists of Yugoslavia, from all its positions in 1966. But many place this beginning a year later, in March 1967, when one of the most important documents in the Croatian history of the second part of the 20th century was published, and that was the Declaration on the Name and Status of the Croatian Literary Language. There is no doubt about the end of the movement, because it was marked by the forced resignations of reform-oriented Croatian communists from the Republican Party leadership, violent suppression of the student protests, politically orchestrated trials, mass expulsions from the League of Communists of Croatia, dismissals, and other various forms of harassment that took place at the end of 1971 and during the 1972. Maybe we can go on. So on this slide, you can see the cover page of the magazine Telegram, in which the Declaration of the Name and the Status of Croatian Literary Language was published. We can go on, please. The movement manifested itself in a number of areas: political, economic, cultural, and in various ways influenced numerous structures and layers of society in Socialist Republic of Croatia. These included members of the LCC, so League of Communists of Croatia, intellectuals, students, and, conditionally speaking, many ordinary citizens who participated in various gatherings, meetings, lectures, or the establishment of the branches of Matica Hrvatska, in English, Croatian Heritage Foundation, which was one of the main components, initiators, and protagonists of the movement. Considering that the movement was extremely heterogeneous, its most basic classification can be made as follows: the reform group in the LCC, Matica Hrvatska, and the student movement. Related to the latter, the ultimate goals of these groups were different. We can go on, please. So on these pictures, I wanted to show you one of the rallies of Matica Hrvatska. In this case, it is in continental part of Croatia, in town Podravska Slatina, in the middle of 1971. Please go on. So the leaders of the reformist part of the LCC generally sought to gain more autonomy for the Socialist Republic of Croatia in the administrative and economic spheres within Yugoslavia. They also wanted to somewhat liberalize relations in society, but not break the LCC's monopoly on government. They also started to allow some expressions of some elements of Croatian national identity, which until then were suppressed in the favor of Yugoslavism under the cover of the slogan brotherhood and unity, meaning that they were declared in the earlier period as Croatian chauvinism and nationalism. Matica Hrvatska, the oldest Croatian culture institution, led a broad process of revival of Croatian national identity in art, in culture, in literature, but also in public life. And therefore, the Croatian Spring is called the second Croatian national revival, drawing parallels with the period of creation of the modern Croatian nation in the first half of the 19th century. We can go on, please. So on these pictures, you can see two most prominent figures in the reform group of Croatian communists. On the left, Savka Dapčević-Kučar, president of the Central Committee of the League of Communists of Croatia, and as mentioned earlier, Miko Tripalo. They were both from Dalmatia. We can go on. In addition to its activities in the field of culture, however, Matica Hrvatska increasingly articulated its views on pressing political and economic issues, thus encroaching on the hitherto untouchable sphere of the LCC. The reform group in the LCC agreed with Matica Hrvatska on some issues, while just tolerating others, because it wanted to stop the regime's previous practice of suppressing dissent with repression, while some of Matica Hrvatska's positions were at odds with the policies of reformist part of the Croatian Republic Party leadership. The main point was that the majority of Matica Hrvatska members, as well as people from its leadership, saw an independent Croatian state as the final result of the reform movement in Socialist Republic of Croatia, while the reformist communists of the LCC wanted just to reorganize Yugoslavia. However, since they had numerous and strong opponents, the possibility opened up, if not for cooperation, then at least for tolerance. We can go on. So on these pictures, you can see some prominent members of Matica Hrvatska. On the right, of course, Franjo Tuđman, some 20 years before he became the first president of Republic of Croatia. And on the left, bust of Marko Veselica, economist and university professor. Maybe some of you will recognize on this photo Croatian Prime Minister Andrej Plenković. Next slide, please. On this slide, on the left, you can see one of the leading linguists, Croatian linguists in this period, Ljudevit Jonke. He was also president of Matica Hrvatska between 1970 and 1972. And on the right, another economist and university professor, Šime Đodan. We can go on. The student movement is the third component of Croatian Spring, which only emerged in 1971. At the same time, it must be said that the student movement itself was also heterogeneous. It was difficult to divide many students in some categories, pro-communist or anti-communist, for example. But within the student movement, there was one group that stood out most clearly and was much more radical than the reformist communists. Even the members of Matica Hrvatska, they demanded rapid and major changes aimed primarily at strengthening the position of Socialist Republic of Croatia within Yugoslavia. These were students who were active Catholics and who expressed their Croatian identity very openly. However, many students hoped that more comprehensive reforms would lead to the collapse rather to the strengthening of Yugoslavia and then establishment of the independent and democratic Croatian state. To achieve this, they were ready to use more determined methods, and the most famous of these was the student strike that lasted from late November to the early December of 1971. I have to emphasize that this was not strike that would last until the demands were met, but just a warning strike. The students who did not want to provoke a brutal reaction of the unitarists and centralist circles in Belgrade demanded nothing more than the implementation of some reforms that were asked earlier by Savka Dabčević-Kučar, so the president of the Central Committee of the League of Communists of Croatia. But the opposite happened, as the strike was used as a pretext for the violent end of the Croatian Spring. It shook Croatian society to such an extent that it set it back, it petrified it in many ways, that the period from the end of the 1971 till the end of the 1980s is referred to as the Croatian silence. We can go on. On this slide, you can see two most prominent student leaders. On the left, Ivan Zvonimir Čičak, and on the right, Dražen Budiša. I would like to say that I met both of these two great Croatians. Next slide. So maybe we are coming to the part that it will be more interesting for you in diaspora. Besides the inhabitants of Socialist Republic of Croatia, it is less known that the Croatian Spring also reflected in Croatian diaspora throughout the Western world, especially among political immigrants, but also among labor migrants in Western Europe. Croatian political immigration was extremely heterogeneous, with numerous organizations and groups representing different opinions on many important issues of the Croatian past, present, and future, which was also evident in the example of the Croatian Spring. However, regardless of this, the prevailing conviction among the majority of political immigrants during this period was that in the struggle for the independent and democratic Croatian state, it is necessary to create as broad a Croatian front as possible. And this meant that the insistence on the division that were created during the World War II must not be continued. In other words, this meant that political immigrants started to offer various forms of cooperation to former Croatian partisans and Croatian communists who were ready, let's say, to free themselves of Yugoslav illusion. We can go on, please. Croatian political immigrants tried in various ways to maintain ties with their homeland, primarily with their relatives, with their friends, just as some of them tried to find like-minded people in Croatia and exchange information with them, send them promotional material, etc. Communication was particularly extensive during the Croatian Spring, and after its collapse, the Yugoslav authorities used these contacts as part of the charge of the so-called counter-revolutionary activity in persecuting political opponents. Moreover, some groups and individuals from political immigrations were labeled as instigators, ideological inspirers, and ultimately as elements who would come to power in independent Croatia on the waves of the so-called mass movement, as Belgrade regime abusively called the Croatian Spring. What is the case here? It was much more convenient for the Yugoslav communist regime to accuse Croatian political immigration, foreign intelligence services, and reactionary elements around the world of having instigated and led the counter-revolution, so Croatian Spring, in Croatia, than to admit that movement had arisen because of the numerous unresolved problems in the country. As for the contacts between political emigrants and intellectuals in Croatia, a number of cases involved efforts at scientific and cultural cooperation through the exchange of books, articles, and opinions. Only a few dare to comment on the situation in Croatia in their written correspondence, but there was no coupling of internal and external enemies, as one of the frequently used communist phrases went. That is, there were no plans for coordinated action between political emigrants and protagonists of the Croatian Spring, whose goal would be destruction of Yugoslavia. One of the most prominent examples of such contacts, but also the understanding of importance of the movement in the country by political emigrants were two symposiums, scientific symposiums in 1968 and in 1971 that were held in Switzerland, organized by the editorial board of the highest quality magazine of Croatian political emigration called Croatian Review or Hrvatska Revija, edited and published by Vinko Nikolic. Since these events were attended by exhibitors from Croatia, of course, they participated incognito. At the second symposium, the editors of Croatian Review also awarded special prizes, which they did not receive, to homeland intellectuals and dissidents, Petar Šegedin and Franjo Tuđman, both former partisans and communists, for their literary and scientific work. Next slide, please. So some political emigrants, but also labor migrants, participated in Croatian Spring through membership in numerous societies of friends of Matica Hrvatska, which were actually its foreign branches. The numerous efforts that Matica invested in affirmation of Croatian national identity were also recognized among Croats abroad. So by the end of the 1971, over 30 such societies were founded in Western Europe and North America, both so in Canada and United States. They operated according to a similar principle as Matica's branches in the homeland. They organized lectures and discussions, procured and distributed books and magazines published by Matica Hrvatska, and nurtured other forms of social entertainment and even religious life. This process was one of many forms of actions by which Croats in their homeland and abroad tried to overcome a gap that was created between them by numerous historical processes that started in the late 19th century and that were especially pronounced after the establishment of the communist Yugoslavia. Probably the most famous such society was the one named after Matija Gubec. So he was, some of you probably know, the legendary leader of peasant uprising in northwest of Croatia in the 16th century. This society was founded in Sweden in the beginning of the 1970s. Why is it important? Because it didn't die out after the collapse of the Croatian Spring, but very quickly gained a reputation among Swedish politicians, intellectuals, journalists, and was the initiator of the gathering of Croatian societies in Sweden at the end of the 1970s. Maybe we can go on. So in next 3 slides, you will see photos of Croats protesting against the violent end of the Croatian Spring in Chicago. These are actually the photos that Professor Ante Čuvalo sent me, so I thank him at this occasion. Namely, after the collapse of the Croatian Spring, Croatians in exile organized numerous protests throughout the Western world. So from Australia to Sweden to South and North America to acquaint politicians, intellectuals, journalists, leaders of religious communities, and the general public with the persecution in Croatia, and also collected financial aid for those imprisoned and their families. Maybe we can go on to see next slide. So some other photos. You see the photo of Šime Đodan. I have mentioned him. Maybe next one photo. This one is interesting. Tito's grave is ready. He is 80 today, on the far left. Okay, next one. Thank you. A smaller number of Croats fled abroad due to the repression, and the most famous among them, I'm sure that some of you heard for him, was the journalist and publicist Bruno Bušić, who was executed by the Yugoslav intelligence service in Paris in 1978. He and several other new political emigrants, also called Springers, Proljećari in Croatian, joined the efforts of Croatian political emigration. In the elections of the Second Assembly of Croatian National Council in 1977, which was organization that gathered most of the Croatian political emigrants since the mid-1970s, Bušić received by far the most votes. The former middle-ranking communist, Franjo Mikulić, who, like Bušić, had fled abroad after serving his prison sentence, was elected president of the CNC Assembly. Moreover, the emergence of the CNC was partly a consequence of the existence and then the collapse of Croatian Spring. These events at home, in homeland, were a strong incentive for the political emigrants to put aside most of their disagreements and try to act together, because it was precisely their disagreements that prevented them to help their homeland in these difficult times when the Croatian Spring was ended. It is also worth mentioning he died a few months ago, Vladimir Pavlinić, who was editor-in-chief of the influential Catholic magazine Glas Koncila, published in Zagreb. He also escaped abroad and joined the editorial board of the London-based magazine Nova Hrvatska, or New Croatia, published by Jakša Kušan, and later he was editor-in-chief of another quality magazine of Croatian political emigration, Poruka Slobodne Hrvatske, or Message of Free Croatia. And we are coming to my last slide. So can we go on the next? Yeah, great, thank you. So what to say in the end? The suppression, the violent end of Croatian Spring further strengthened the belief of proponents of Croatian state independence, but also led many those who advocated Croatia remaining in a truly reformed Yugoslavia to conclude that the Croatian people could successfully defend their interests only in a nation state. The Croatian people were finally able to express their desire, in a free referendum in 1991, but then had to defend with arms in their hands newly created independent and democratic Republic of Croatia against great Serbian aggression. So we can say that 1991 was in a way a continuation of 1971. What started with the Croatian Spring in 1971 was successfully finished in 1991 and during the Homeland War. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Well, bravo, Professor Krasic and Professor Mandic. Excellent presentation. And I had forgotten the significant role that Matica Hrvatska had played in the Croatian Spring. I actually wrote a 25-page paper on this topic in grad school in Washington, D.C. in the late 70s. And my conclusion was that so many younger folks and university students that were born and raised under communism, played such an important part in this movement leading the protests that it was truly a prelude, a precursor for future actions within Croatia that would lead to a free and democratic Croatia. And my dad would tell me, I hope you're right, Steve, but there was a lot going on in Eastern Europe, and we know what happened in the late 80s all around Central and Eastern Europe. So Professor Krasić, any more comments about that geopolitical reality of the youth and the students? And then we have a question coming from John Hrvoje, president of the Croatian Academy of America, after maybe a quick reply to that question. Yes, Professor Krasić. Okay.
Yes. So can you structure a little clear your what was your question?
The significance of the youth and the students. And they were born under communism. That's all they knew. And yet they stood up, they protested. And of course, movement was put down, but to me, it signaled those 20-year-olds will be back as 30 or 40-year-olds at some point to fight and push for a free, democratic, independent Croatia. So that, how important was that reality of the university students?
Yeah, I understand now. Thank you. So student strike was a great defeat of Yugoslav communist regime, because communists tried in many ways, through education system, through media, through youth organizations, etc., to mold children and the youth to believe in Yugoslav state and to believe in socialism. And those young men in Croatia show them that they reject and Yugoslavia and communism. And what was the significance? Maybe just to point out that all important student leaders took important positions in Croatian political life in the early 90s. Dražen Budiša was one of the leader of HSLS, so Liberal Party. Ivan Zvonimir Čičak joined the Croatian oldest political party, HSS, Hrvatska seljačka stranka, Croatian Peasant Party. Ante Parađić joined Hrvatska stranka prava, etc., etc. So,
right. Okay. Well, good. Next question. John Hrvoje from New York City. You have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. So first, for Dr. Krasić, thank you for mentioning the Croatian Hrvatska narodna vijeća, Croatian National Council. I wanted to just say quickly, I think it was a tragedy that the HNV dissolved itself right after Franja Tuđman's election. I think it would have helped immensely if that organization had continued in existence during the Homeland War. But let me just say my questions. For Dr. Krasić, tell us a little bit about the Croatian communist opponents of the Croatian Spring. Vladimir Baković, for instance. Many of us old timers remember him because he I think actually lived for a few years after Tito. And for Dr. Mandic, I'm just curious your take as to how the Herzegovinian Franciscans were able to essentially reestablish themselves under the communist regime, despite, in spite of the hatred, obviously, that the Yugoslav communists had towards them, as supposedly being Ustaše. Thank you.
Yes, Professor Krasić first.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, CNC had a great role in fighting for independent Croatia. For example, in the mid-1970s, many Croatian political immigrants were labeled as Nazis and terrorists. And some 15 years later, in the end of the 1980s, leading members of CNC actually visited European Parliament and were welcomed there by Otto von Habsburg. So pretty important figure. According to CSC's documents, in it was said that after the Croatian parliament, democratically elected Croatian parliament, will be instituted in Zagreb, the CNC will disband itself. But I agree with you, some form of unity among Croatian diaspora in that kind of form would be extremely useful during the homeland war. Regarding Vladimir Bakaric, actually he was in front of fighting for reformation of Yugoslavia, along with most prominent Slovenian communist Edvard Kardelj, and they were fighting against Aleksandar Ranković, who was Serbian communist, and some other centralists. But at some point he said, "Wow, we have to stop. We have to stop because communism is in danger. Yugoslavia is in danger." And so he was during the 60s one of the he was so pro-reformists, and is somewhere between in the spring of 1971 he becomes a leader of anti-reformist group, which in the end prevailed in Central Committee of League of Communists of Yugoslavia.
Okay.
So pretty complex character.
Right.
We can label him white or black.
Okay. Professor Mandic, John's question about the Franciscans.
Thank you, Academic John Krasic, for the question. I hope that I will answer precisely. After the end of World War II, communist regime, Communist Party of Yugoslavia, they installed their supporters in the Franciscan order in Herzegovina. So that's the case. Not just secret police of Communist Party of Yugoslavia. It's not only they have monopoly at the Herzegovinian or Bosnian territory. In the 1945 in Herzegovina, I found documents where is the Soviet secret police NKVD. So Josip Broz Tito and Stalin, they cooperate during the war operations in World War II in 1945 and then after 1945. So Soviet secret police NKVD instructed the Yugoslav secret police. And actually, Yugoslav secret police installed the first provincial of Herzegovinian Franciscans, Friar Mile Leko, was the supporter of communist regime after the Second World War II. And the fact is, communist secret service control all religious society, not just Herzegovinian Franciscans, Catholic Church in Mostar, Islam centers and the Islam organization in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and also Serb Orthodox in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So that's the answer how communists ruled over the Franciscans. But the majority of Franciscans after the Second World War was on they supported communist regime, but some precisely about 95 friars were opponents of communist regime. But also this is the fact I gathered. You see, after 1945 till 1919, communist regime mountain trials were conducted against 91 members of the Herzegovinian Franciscan province. In these trials, members of the province were sentenced to a total of 348 years and 28 days and served a sentence of 225 years, 4 months and 60 days in a communist casemates, in a prison, in jails. After the war, not a third of pre-war Franciscans remained in Herzegovina. In the immediate aftermath of Second World War, the province was deprived of its property. Schools were abolished. religious education was banned. And at the end of 1945, the province, it was brought to the brink of collapse. That's the communist regime. And in these days, we feel even that communist propaganda in our Croatia, in our Bosnia and Herzegovina, not just about the spring of 1971, Croatian Spring. Also, we have communist propaganda about communist war crimes during the Second World War too.
Right, right. Okay, thank you, Professor Mandic. Professor Krasic, you saw, and you already answered on the chat box, Carol Gartland's question, but any quick comment about Marica Ilsenka Hrvatska and their significance in 1985? But yes, Professor Krasic, sounds like the Croatian silence was the mode of operandi in the 1980s. Is that correct?
Yes, that is right. So most prominent, let's call them springers, were persecuted. I have to point out three names. So Vlado Gotovac, editor of most popular magazine of Croatian Spring, Hrvatski tjednik. Then I have already mentioned Marko Veselica and Franjo Tuđman. Tuđman and Gotovac were again arrested in 1980 and sentenced to prison terms, about 2 years in prison. But Marko Veselica suffered much worse fate, because in 1981 he was sentenced to another 12 years in prison, primarily because of the big interview he gave to West German magazine Der Spiegel, in which he was talking about the economic exploitation of Croatia by Belgrade regime, and he was even called as Croatian Mandela because of number of years he has spent in jail.
Oh, okay, good, thank you. Judy Zivich in Cleveland, chair of this event today. Any final words or question up your sleeve before I give a 60-second closing commercial?
No, I don't have any questions, and I can't see the chat, so I'm hoping that it's being recorded and we can answer any questions that are in there after the fact. I just wanted to again remind you and thank you all for being here today, and just to remind you that we are going to continue these throughout this year. We're thinking maybe in June, or probably maybe at the end of summer as well, since people will be on vacation. And to also tell you again, my email address, it's in the chat, but if you can't get in there like I can't, let me just give it to you quickly. It's judiz@roadrunner.com. And if you have any questions that you would like to, after the meeting, that you'd like the professors to answer, or if you would like the link, if you can't get to it in the chat, to some additional reading that they've suggested, please feel free to email me. If you have any topics of Croatian history that you're very interested in learning more about, please, again, email us or me. Also visit the NFCA CF website. At some point in the future, we will hopefully have this entire presentation loaded there under, I hope, the education tab, so that people can watch the YouTube video of these presentations and learn more. That's about all I have right now.
Okay.
Steve?
Okay, Velika Hvala to our two distinguished guest professors today from the University of Zagreb. Congrats, bravo. Well done, Judy Zivich, for making this first history speaker session happen. And we're looking at June 10th for the second one. Stay tuned. Let me remind everybody, it's NFCA's 30th anniversary year, and all financial support is appreciated. And Judy mentioned the website. I think a lot of you have my sjrukavina@gmail.com email too. Our NFCA annual meeting is set for June 2nd and 3rd in the nation's capital, with a very, very special celebratory reception at the Croatian Embassy on Saturday evening, June 3rd, and a big announcement about a singer who will probably be the most talented one who ever sang at the embassy to be joining us that night. You're all invited. Our member group, the Association of Croatian American Professionals, hosts their annual meeting in Zagreb, July 5th to 8th. And this meeting will bring together, 400 plus talented, successful, incredibly savvy professionals across the board and probably from 30 or 40 countries. And it will be one amazing business networking opportunity. And I'm pleased that our NFCA board and members like Judy and Ron, our work with Damar Krasic and so many others, and we'll be there in attendance in early July in Zagreb. Lastly, the Croatian Fraternal Union, our largest member group, has set their quadrennial 26th anniversary. We'll be celebrating their 129th year of existence in Cleveland, September 24th to 27th, with 600 to 700 Croatian Americans ready to rock and roll and celebrate a true music and culture extravaganza to be celebrated in Cleveland at a Marriott 3 blocks away from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that's it, folks. Looking forward to seeing some of you, most of you again at one of these special events or history speaker sessions in the future. Thank everyone. I'm going to, wish you all the best. And I'm so glad we had a great group, and we're going to share this recording with so many other friends on our list and those who RSVP'd for today's session too. Okay, and Mark Plavicic, thanks, Judy, Professor Mandic, and Professor Krasic. To be continued. Look forward to seeing you all live in person too a little later this year. Thanks, everyone.
Do viđenja.
Bye.
Virginia.
Hvala.
Virginia book